Okay, the Trios Championship has always kind of been like this elephant in the room that AEW fans like, okay, dude, let's admit there's a lot of tandem wrestling on AEW. I love that. There are a lot of people who don't, but I love that. And I know that other people love that too. And I think that we've already talked about this as a trio ourselves, right? We're trios.
Yep.
There's a lot of potential in a trios division in AEW. I think that's a no-brainer. But Bonds, you got tagged in something this week in a booking by Bonds, and you tagged me back in, and you were saying, hey, like, maybe this is something we chat about. So I would want to point this out, and I'm going to put it as a this or that.
Yeah.
SPD, Bonds. What do you think is more, I guess, natural at this stage of AEW? A cruiserweight division, which has some major names that Bonds, I'm going to let you take that argument, and SPD, a trios division. You and I have talked about a trios division basically since like October of last year, right?
Yeah.
Like, so why don't Bonzi take it away? You got tagged in that question, and I think that really piqued your interest, and that's what I want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential for a cruiserweight division in AEW. We have a lot of under 200-pound wrestlers that are really talented. I even mentioned a few, Orange Cassidy is one of them, Private Party, both of them, the Martin brothers. And these guys are all tag teams, you know what I mean? So you have all these teams that can also be involved in cruiserweight matches as well.
Phoenix.
So you have this huge group of guys. You have Ray Phoenix is one of
Darby.
them. Darby again. And he's and the question was raised as, would you transition the TNT title to that? I wouldn't do that. I would have both. I think that's smart, especially considering like the best belt, the FTW belt, isn't considered a real belt yet. So we have exactly. So until that happens, I think that adding belts is a great idea. And Marco Stunt, exactly. We could have that could be his belt as well.
Hey, dude, honestly, like,
that's the division for him to be
disrespectful. Like, let's not be disrespectful to Marco.
No, at all.
And honestly,
that's exactly where he needs to go. That's what would legitimize him to a lot of people as having a cruiserweight division. Because part of the problem, and this isn't an insult to him at all, part of the problem is it's hard to believe that he could beat somebody up that's so much bigger than him sometimes. Because
it's not, and it's not unique just to him, Bonds.
But he was mentioned. That's for a lot of people. We have the same problem with Darby.
Kip Sabian, right? SPD struggled with that with Darby's run for a long time, right? Kip Sabian is somebody who, like, I think is incredibly talented. Kip is actually quite talented, and when he's with Miro and Penelope, he could do something well, right? But he's not going to beat Lance Archer.
No,
like it's just not going to happen.
It separates the talent. It gives smaller talent something for them to go after. That's easier for us to recognize as being possible. We have a problem. Like, there are people on the internet, and I'm not saying us, but there are people that have a problem with Darby being the TNT champion because of how he got ragdolled by Brian Cage. And if he was the cruiserweight champion and he couldn't wrestle people like Brian Cage, or if those people couldn't go after him, that would legitimize that title, and that would legitimize him as a champion to a lot more people. And I think that that's something that you have to really think about, because there's so many cruiserweights. Jack Evans, Angelico, all these guys are smaller guys.
Run them off, bro. This roster has so many that fall into that category.
Most of the roster is cruiserweights.
Can you imagine the type of matches that you could get out of result? Like, if you literally threw like Kip versus like Isaiah Cassidy, with how we've seen, like, these types of like matchups, you just throw some of these talents. Orange Cassidy could get some more exposure with guys who are more his size. Darby could get exposure. We saw how different of a wrestler Darby was when he went up against Joey Janela.
Against Joey Janela, that was a great match.
That match made me eat my words, right? Yep, It did. And it made me respect Darby in a different light. And I know, like, that would be such a nice change of pace with how much more television AEW, and like not just TV time, because Tony did say another primetime show would come out.
Yep.
But their utilization of YouTube, they're like the expansion with Paul White coming on board with the new show, right? Like, you could use some of that open space for something like this. And I think that's such a great idea.
Well, because you could have a lot of matches on Dark or the other Dark shows that they're having, and then you could bring them on to Dynamite, because Tony already said that these matches are canon. Like, they count. Your wins on them count. You could have somebody win 10 matches on Dark and then challenge for a Cruiserweight title, and somebody out of nowhere, and it'd be really entertaining television.
You could have some like Sean Dean. There's so many guys on this roster that like
the deal.
You could have guys like that, and even like throw out one of the Gunn brothers in there, dude. Like those kids are working their butts off for AEW right now.
Absolutely.
Give them a shot at a Cruiserweight belt. Why not? Right? Like, I love that idea. SPD, I'll let you tap into the trios because I want to hear your guys' arguments, because we only get one choice. I want the fans out there to decide trios or Cruiserweight.
So this is why I want a quick rebuttal on the Cruiserweight. I think that the typical AEW roster is not stacked with big men like a typical WWE. So you have average size guys being champs and going, Kenny Omega is not a huge guy. He's a champ in any level worldwide, but we don't have a fully stacked roster of, Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman's and things like that, like WWE does. So to do a Cruiserweight, you'd have to do kind of a more extreme, 200 pounds is I weigh 205 and
way to brag.
So people like Sean Dean, people like
you only get one, Lori.
But I feel like to do a Cruiserweight would really kind of pull away. Like you just saw Orange Cassidy, versus Chris Jericho. You could throw, if you want to do a typical Cruiserweight, Orange Cassidy would be in that, but he's a star. He deserves to be on the main roster. Pac was in 205. He is not a Cruiserweight eyeball. He is a world heavyweight champion contender.
Preach, brother.
24/7.
King Neville was my jam, dude. Neville was amazing.
Me personally, I would pick the trios over Cruiserweight because AEW is so stacked with tag team, and tag team wrestling is kind of what they're built off of.
Rattle off some of those teams.
Yeah, you got the Death Triangle for one, obviously. You could throw in the Kingston, Butcher, and Blade. You can throw any trio of the Inner Circle. You could throw any trio from the Nightmare Family. Now, the Matt Hardy brand is growing, so Matt Hardy could be with Private Party as a trios brand, or TH2, the Debt Collectors, which we've seen time and time again. You could throw the Gun Club in there, Jurassic Express. Thank you, Brian. Now FTR with Tully. So it just, you go on and on and on. There's more star power and more draw to me with a trios champion than a Cruiserweight. But the best of both worlds, ultimately, like you said, Mindrunner, would be both.
In the end, we get both, and we're all happy. But I'm just saying,
I'm picking trios for now.
Why not have a little debate? And I think the idea at this point, Bonds, who do you think wins?
I would love a trios belt personally.
Okay, we're all on board. Trios first, then I guess. All right.
Yeah.
SPD, your argument was very convincing. I think that when you do look at the overall stack of the roster, that is a good point by you.